Why is it important? Judge Michel, say the Trump administration did find a way to justify suspending habeas corpus or ignoring habeas corpus. What would that mean for regular Americans? What would that mean for our legal system?
Well, basically, it would mean that anybody could be arrested and imprisoned anytime for any reason or no reason at all. And there would be no way that person or their family or their friends or anybody else could help them. They would sometimes simply disappear, as happened in many foreign countries where government authorities just, quote, disappeared people. Sometimes they went to jails and people knew where they were. Other times they literally disappeared. And then many times later bodies were found. So it's a terrible problem if there's no way to test the lawfulness of detention, because it means the people in charge of the police type organizations can do anything they want, anytime, for any reason, with no check on their power. The whole idea of our Constitution is based on checks and balances. The courts are supposed to be a check on excess by the other two branches, unlawful actions, and correspondingly, if the courts act improperly, the Congress can step in. Judges can be impeached, so can other officials. So the whole idea is each branch is supposed to do its job, stay out of the job of the others, and serve as a check if one of the other branches goes off the rails.
Jane and I like to say we are not lawyers or judges. We are lawyer and judge adjacent. So I just want to ask you a question, because I want to hear you say the words. When I talked about this on social media, someone said to me, well, this is just for illegal immigrants, isn't it? And another lawyer piped up and said, when they suspend habeas corpus, it's not for some, it's for all. There's no asterisk. If they suspend it at all, it's going to be applied to all. And there's not just habeas corpus, but if you are so-and-so. That is true, correct?
You are correct. It is either applicable or totally suspended for anybody and everybody everywhere in the whole country. So if habeas corpus were suspended, any American citizen who lived a totally perfect lawful life could be arbitrarily arrested by authorities, and there would be no protection and no check and no recovery from that. So it's a big threat. It's not a small thing. And it can't be limited to violent illegal immigrants or any other kind of group. You are exactly right about that, Greg. You'd be a good lawyer.
Yes.
Oh, God, don't tell him that, Judge, because we're never going to hear his head is going to go.
For the record, I got all A's in con law, so just putting that down.
Judge Paul Michel is our guest, and we're talking about habeas corpus, and I think it's important that people understand countries like Russia and North Korea and China, even, they grab you and they disappear you. They do this with political rivals. They do this with anybody who can journalists, anybody who wants to speak out against the regime. That's what they do in those countries. I would think that is not what we want to see in America.
It would be totally inconsistent with every year of our existence as a country, and contravene our law and create a horrible circumstance for all our citizenry.
I'm curious, when you talk to other members of your group, what is the level of concern when you hear things like this coming out of the Trump administration?
Well, I should say that misunderstandings and misstatements preceded the Trump administration. There's been a lot of loose, false talk about what the role of judges is, how courts act, why we need them. But I would certainly agree with the idea that it's gotten much worse in recent months under the Trump second term. And that's a great concern, because so many things are being done by the administration at a rate never before seen. Hundreds of initiatives, endless numbers of executive orders, separate from other initiatives. There are something like 250 lawsuits challenging those actions by the administration pending in the courts, federal courts, all around the country. So this is a huge showdown battle between the rule of law on the one hand and unchecked executive power to do whatever they want on the other hand. It's very stark. It's very worrisome. The other members of the coalition are highly alarmed, and that's why we've all volunteered to try to help clarify things so the citizenry and media and everybody else and policymakers and politicians can understand what's at stake and how it all works.
And just to reiterate, again, going back to habeas corpus and suspending habeas corpus, if the Trump administration were able to do this, this isn't only going to affect people who are here illegally, bad people who are here illegally. This will affect everyone in this country. Every single one of us then would be subject to just getting snatched up with essentially no recourse.
And no basis. Just because somebody's angry at you or somebody wants to get you out of the way, or you're a media person and they want to silence you, or you're a judge and they want to make sure you can't rule against them.
Which is funny because as you say that, I'm thinking they're taking people off the street because of tattoos. They're snatching up judges in Milwaukee. So there are examples showing that they are pressing on the limits of this before they completely have to just say, well, habeas corpus is just it's an impediment. Let's just get rid of that.
It's just a suggestion.
Greg, I think that's even a little worse than you say. I think basically the implicit message of the administration is there are no limits, none. We can do anything we want on any basis that we think is sufficient.
We're going to continue our conversation with Judge Paul Michel on the other side. Stay close. You are listening to Matt Nair on Air. This is the Civic Media Radio Network. We will be right back. Good morning and welcome back to Matt Nair on Air. Jane Matt Nair, Greg Bach, Dr. Slide on the board, coming to you from our studio at Radio Park in Racine. You can always join us, call or text. The number is the same, 855-752-4842. Leave a comment if you're watching on the live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and what used to be Twitter. Our guest is Judge Paul Michel, a member of Keep Our Republic's Article 3 Coalition. And right before the break, we were talking about Stephen Miller and the Trump administration suggesting we just suspend habeas corpus. Who needs it? No big deal. And we did have a question on the live stream from State Senator Chris Alfheim, who asks Judge Michel, could the habeas corpus waiver have been used during the January 6th attack on the Capitol?
I wouldn't think so. The scale of what the statute providing for the waiver looks to is, mass armed invasion by a foreign power or a foreign terrorist organization, or an armed rebellion like the American Civil War. The violence at the Capitol was certainly extreme and extensive, but it doesn't amount to an equivalent of a foreign invasion or a civil war.
But I think it's an interesting parallel. Just imagine if the administration at that point had decided to just snatch these people up and disappear all of them. All of those January 6 people got due process. They all went through due process, and they were judged by juries of their peers. I can't imagine the shrieking that would come from some folks if they were not allowed the same protections under habeas corpus.
Yes, Jane, you have a very good point. Legal rights have to apply to everybody, and legal limits have to apply to everybody, including judges. And so the question is the situation or the action lawful? And that obviously in the end has to be determined by judges, not by officials of the other two branches. The founders gave us a great constitution, I would say. It's lasted longer than any other democratic constitution in the history of the world. It's the oldest democracy, republic extant today. And they gave us a government of three parts, three branches. They're all important. They all have their role. You could think of it as a three-legged stool. If you break or take away one of the legs, we know what happens to the stool. The whole thing collapses and falls over. So all three branches are essential. Earlier, I used the phrase checks, but the rest of the phrase is and balances, checks and balances. The balances part is how each branch has to do its job, be respectful of the other two, stay in its lane, and avoid excess. And when that's done, the government works beautifully. We know how to do it. We've done it for almost 250 years. We ought to keep doing it, I say.
Yep, absolutely. In the couple of minutes that we have left, Judge Michel, I did want to talk about Judge Hannah Dugan in Milwaukee. A federal grand jury did indict Judge Dugan yesterday on charges she helped a man who was here illegally evade ICE agents. I think it's important that people understand that when you go before a grand jury or a case goes before a grand jury, they're only hearing one side, correct?
That is correct. And so the first chance that the arrested person has to tell their side of the story is when it gets into the court following an indictment. And that's where the Dugan case will be going. So then both sides present evidence, and then a judge makes a determination whether a trial is even warranted. Maybe they'll say yes, maybe they'll say no. And if there is a trial, there still has to be proof by the government that a crime was committed and it's a serious crime, and therefore there should be consequences. So Judge Dugan will have her day in court, as we like to say, day in court. That's another important part of our system. It's very unusual for a judge to be arrested and now indicted. But of course, we like to say, and rightly so, no one is above the law. Not a judge, not the president, not you, not me. And that's the way it has to be if we're going to have a functioning democracy under the rule of law rather than just under the rule of raw political power.
The one thing I would question, though, was the necessity of cuffing her and videotaping all of that. She wasn't a flight risk. It's not like she was going to go anywhere. In most instances, in a case like this, isn't it, here's the date we want you to appear, you show up, we'll release you on your own recognizance?
Yes, that would be the norm. And in fact, in a case like this, I would have expected the accused person to voluntarily surrender immediately. No, there was no need for dramatic arrest and handcuffing. It looked to me like it was not only unnecessary, but inappropriate, because it just made a mockery of the situation. If the judge is guilty of a crime, she'll be found guilty. If she's not, she'll be acquitted. But the publicity stunt of having a dramatic public arrest was totally unnecessary. I think very unusual and very inappropriate. And I question whether the purposes were legitimate or it was another intimidation tactic aimed at judges and citizens in general. You better do what we want or you're going to get hammered.
Yep. Judge Paul Michel is a member of Keep Our Republic's Article 3 Coalition. It has been so informative and so educational. Judge Michel, thank you so very, very much. We would love to get you back on in a couple of weeks and just do a democracy check.
There it is. There it is.
Thank
I
you.
like that.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be with you. Very
Thank you
important
so
work
much for
you're
your
doing.
time.
Thank you, sir.
We have news coming up next. Stay close. You are listening to Matt Nair on air on the vast, statewide, countrywide. You can pick us up in New Zealand if you have the app. The Civic Media Radio Network. Don't go away.
Before, I know I'll often stop and think about them.